If you love movies and books, then you love stories, just like me and the billions of humans on this earth. We are, as a species, addicted to stories, even when we go to sleep, according to Jonathan Gottschall of The Storytelling Animal. The reasons why we all love stories is not yet understood, but the theory suggests that it's related to evolution or side benefits of evolution. Personally, I have experienced the magic of stories, on the screen, in person, and on paper. I couldn't understand why stories can make me belly laugh, cry, and feel all of these mysterious feelings all at the same time. Hours of research later, I came to realize the power of this skill and how it can help us to connect to others. The stories in comic books and manga helped me to escape from the mundane world as a child. I loved stories about a heroine who defeats evil and somehow meets a group of people along the way, eventually calling them his or her friends. Stories like Doraemon, Sailor Moon, The Wizard of Oz, you name it. To my surprise, actually, storytelling is a skill that can be learned. Fortunately for me, because I come from a family of non-storytellers, so naturally, I'll find myself struggling to tell stories at dinner table. I could never understand why some people are so interesting and others not so much. That somewhat is attributed to the fact that interesting people tell stories. Did you notice? These are stories about themselves, and we get them to know better through these stories that they tell. The book that will help you and I to learn storytelling is How to Tell a Story by the Moth producers. The Moth Story Slam is an open mic storytelling competition in which anyone can share a true, personal 5-minute story on the night's theme. The producer of the competition brilliantly made a manual on how to tell a story. Most books on storytelling are about business and sales strategy storytelling, so this book is really quite unique. And needless to say, the authors have a wealth of experience training storytellers. My hope is, through reading this book, I'll be able to craft multiple stories and have it up my sleeves for when the conversation runs dry or to fill the gaps between the dinner table. Through this book, you'll learn about how to find a story, the story's foundation, and elements of the story, the do and don'ts to make it a better story each time. Of course, there are no hard and fast rules to telling a story, but with these guidelines, these stories have a signature feel of the Moth stories, which I really enjoy listening to and give me an immense connection to the storyteller. This visual summary only includes the middle section of the book about crafting a story. So let's get into it. The difference between a storyteller and a non-storyteller is that the storyteller has a library full of stories, just ready to be told in the dinner table or during awkward pauses. Naturally, before crafting a story, we need to stack up potential stories. How do we do that? Now, let's go mining for memories. This process of crafting a story is like mining for gold. The first of the many steps is to collect rocks so that we can sift through these potential gemstones we call stories. This will require blocking out time to make a mental excavation of. If you were Taylor Swift and made a reprise album, what song would you include? What is your greatest hits? This may require live reflection, sitting down with a photo book or a treasure box. Imagine that you are making a scrapbook of your life. Now, what pictures do you wish you have? Remember to ask yourself a question. Which are the moments that showed glimpses of who I truly am? It could be memories from postcards, concert stops, your favorite dishes by your grandma. But be careful. Personal struggles do not make a good story, as they can become a long list of your grievances. Instead, ask, how is it important to me? Here are the few prompts and questions you can ask yourself. When did you experience something extraordinary? When did you experience something emotional? When did you experience something that made you come to a decision? When did you experience something that caused you to make a change? Are there any anecdotes you often tell? Now that you have collected the rocks, we'll look at a few tools to uncover the gem waiting underneath. In the Moth studios, Moth producers cracked the foundation of a great story, which is what the story means to you. They would ask questions like, why, of all the stories in your life, does this one stick with you? Why do you care? What effect did it have on you, big or small? These questions unlock the stakes of your story. A clear story needs the teller wants and whys, and in other words, stakes. A stake is whatever consequence the hero of a story will bear if the goal of the story fails. An inconsequential story makes the audience check out. So in a personal story, a stake is a moment you, the main character, feel that they have everything to gain or lose. This very important part of the story makes the audience understand your why, and therefore making them care about the story and to hold their attention. In the words of a very great Pixar producer, Andrew Stand, make me care. There are internal and external stakes. An example of an external stake is a life or death situation, which are very universal. Internal stakes are your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, what makes the story unique to you, what it means to you. Stakes can create excitement and tension. For stakes to work, we need to make the reader understand our whys. You can find them through your story by looking for a problem that needs to be solved, a struggle over a tough choice, a question that needs to be answered, a mystery you're trying to get to the bottom of, or an unexpected event. For example, for my story, this promotion is important to me because it'll be my first promotion that I've worked my hard ass off for the last year. The story arc. Stories involve changes or evolution. The change of the story is the structural frame that helps you build your overall arc in the story. For example, if it's about families bonding after a disastrous wedding rehearsal dinner, did you feel fretful about attending the family gatherings after that? Now, finding your arc will require you to examine questions like, who were you at the beginning of the story? Who were you at the end? How do you live your life differently as a result of the events in the story? Why is that meaningful? There are different types of changes. It can be emotional, for example, from dreading each day of school to being super happy to wake up every morning. It can be physical, from being out of shape to running a marathon. It can be situational, from being in a terrible marriage to being divorced and fancy-free. It can also be behavioral, from being a lover of bacon to becoming a vegan. Lastly, the change can be attitudinal, from hating dogs to now having 3. Remember, a story without stakes nor arc is merely a stated series of events or a report of events. The one sentence. The one important foundation that will determine your whole story will be the one sentence that sums your story up. Think of it like a thesis statement that they teach you at school for your essay. Further down the track, having the one sentence nailed will help you to edit out the non-essential details of the story. For example, of my story, my one sentence would be, I almost talked myself out of deserving a promotion I worked so hard for. Now that we have nailed the foundation to a story, time to piece it together. Elements of a story. The narrative stepping stones. Narrative stepping stone connects the beginning and the end of the story, everything that happens in between. The narrative stepping stones are essential in the sense that if you're driving a tour bus in Paris, you need to ensure the route you take from A to B takes them through Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, and Notre Dame. Otherwise, your passenger wouldn't even know they're in Paris. But you don't need to take them through your daily cafes or grocery shop. There are some points in the story that can be jump cut, just like your tour in Paris. How to figure out your essential narrative stepping stones. The first step is to list out all the events that happened and lead to the climax of the story. Include backstory and important thoughts or realization that led to the climax and resolution at the end. The Moth story structure often alternate between action and reflection, so keep that in mind as well. Then the last step is to determine what's necessary for the audience to get a big picture for them to follow along your story. Think to yourself, which part of the story must have details? Which part of the story can be condensed? Scene. Scene brings the story to life, just like in the movies. It illustrates part of the story that is compelling and critical to the arc. It paints a picture and allows the audience to be in the space with you as you experience it. We'll examine scenes a lot more later on. Another part of the story is summary. Summary moves us through timeline. It skips through the boring bits. For example, like 2 divorces later or 5 weeks later, instead of walking us through all that's happened in those time. The reflection is another important part of a story. Reflections are feelings, insights about what you've learned, concluded, decided, or accepted. Reflections are necessary to show the audience how you feel. How to build a scene. The number one rule is to tell it how you experience it. A really good tip is to blow up the details. Think about, how did you feel? Where were you? What song was playing in the background? What brand of t-shirt were you wearing? What was the texture of the blanket? Use details to build character as well, to bring that character to life. Now let's look at an example of my story. Instead of saying, I was told I got the promotion, now I want to describe that scene. I received a message from my big boss to ask if I could catch up with my manager, being included in that meeting. It seemed all so sudden, and this kind of call really happens when they tell you they're letting you go. My head was racing in a million thoughts. Maybe they've caught on that I want to leave and I'm not getting this promotion at all. A tiny screen popped up in the corner of my laptop. I clicked the receive call button with my heart beating so quickly. A few minutes of small talk later, my big boss says, "We've got news regarding your promotion, and it is official that you'll be stepping in a new role." A smile escaped my face and I throw my fist in the air. Doesn't that example just take you straight to where I was? You knew how I was feeling, and would you be curious of what happened next?